like any person who is familiar with FHIR and probably a developer who is familiar with FHIR can be able to consume objects from the OpenIMIS FHIR APIs. From a technical capability, OpenIMIS allows us to be able to allow maps like, okay, I have already captured this already, but important to mention is like the mapping of FHIR resources. I think Dr. Dragos will mention more into this. And then from a validation against, we also like have like some validation against OpenIMIS implementation guide, as well as a secure API gateway that is offered by OpenIMIS. So all that aside, like what are some of the interoperability challenges that we are encountering here in Africa? So the first and the most significant one is fragmentation when it comes to digital systems, that is EMRs, registries, and financing tools. So like different implementations implies like the data formats and the data structures will be distinct. So making it very difficult for us to be able to exchange information, which is like very important when it comes to improving the quality of care, which is the primary objective in this case. We also have like some significant paper-based, in as much as like we know like digital penetration has improved significantly, but we still have a significant part of the planet that is still dependent on paper-based and semi-digital claims workflows. So integrating governance and limited connectivity, which is actually like a primary challenge within Africa, as well as difficulties in aligning data semantics from codes to providers to facilities. So how does FHIR resolve these challenges? FHIR provides a common interoperable data model for all digital systems. It also like enables real-time and secure data exchange across different platforms. FHIR also like standardizes integration with national HIEs and ID registries. So the idea is like having like that common reference point. Like we have like distinct systems, but we have like FHIR being that common reference point to ensure like we are both speaking like the same language ideally. So FHIR also reduces manual data transformation and errors because at the end of the day, we are speaking the same language, allowing us to be able to communicate and understand each other better. So FHIR also have like capability to support offline and online synchronization. And that's why like one of the challenges up there was from an infrastructural perspective, Africa still has some significant part of the planet still working with paper-based and semi-digital claims processing. So for a situation where we have like a good example is like having like the semi-digital system, and then this specific country decides to move into OpenIMIS. So how can FHIR be able to support that migration from the legacy insurance system into OpenIMIS? So basically how that will look like is we'll be able to create data migration templates which are conformant to FHIR. So basically like we'll have like the patient object, we'll have like the policies and the, transformed into coverage. And then we'll map like the data sources from the source system, from the legacy system into the FHIR resource. And then we'll transform this into a format that is friendly to OpenIMIS. And then this will then be loaded into OpenIMIS. So the idea here, we have like the legacy system, and then we have the target system being OpenIMIS. And we have on this extreme end, we have developers who are familiar with the source system, and we have developers who are familiar with OpenIMIS. So the common point for them is FHIR resources, which is a common language between the two, which makes like migration and switching and upgrading the system to OpenIMIS being much, much easier. And of course, the correct way to terminate any data migration and system transformation process is to be able to validate the data at the end of the process. Okay. And on a different level, so we've looked at what FHIR is, what OpenIMIS is, and how we can be able to migrate into OpenIMIS. But then from, I think a senior friend of mine once told me like, what you don't track cannot be improved. And from an analytical perspective, like
sorry, Peter. Please mute your mics. Maybe Mercy, you could help me mute the people whose mics are on. Mercy, please help me mute the people whose mics are on.
Data visualization and bar. Database SQL database.
Mercy, can you hear us?
Can admin mute
Selawit, please mute your mic.
ማለት ወደ ኋላ መመለስ እንደውልት የኔ ወጥቻሽ መልካም እንትን ሰኞ ምገናኝ ነገ እንትን ካልኩም ልመጣ እችላለሁ። ቻው መልካም ምሽት።
Thank you. Back to where we were. So what I was saying is like what cannot be tracked cannot be improved. So it's always like important to have like an additional layer above the operational systems. So we have like OpenIMIS being the operational system and FHIR supporting the interoperability. But FHIR also supports like enabling us to have like better and easier time when it comes to data analysis and AI. So how the FHIR helps with this is we already have like a standardized data model, and we don't have like to, as the rest of the industries are coming together to try and standardize the data of their formats. Like the healthcare is already a step ahead, and we already have like standardized data models. We also have like machine readable resources. So as I had said, FHIR is JSON based and RESTful. So in this case, like developer friendly and machine readable. FHIR also like allows us to be able to bulk export data. So like you can export like a single resource, but you can also like export a document as well. So we also have like AI-enabled workflows. So like the fact that this is the data models of FHIR are machine readable, it allows us to be able to automate this and be able to allow for scoring when it comes to like from a claims perspective. From an interoperability and AI, like from an interoperability perspective, which is already like covered within the first phases of the webinar, FHIR allows us to have like consistent and comparable data points, allowing like analysis of the data much easier. Thank you. That is the end of my presentation. As I had mentioned earlier, like mine was just to give a high-level overview, and then Dr. Dragos will proceed to have like a deep dive, more of a continuation of what I have covered. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Sylvia.
Thank you very much, Peter. Please remember to mute your mics because it's a bit disruptive if your mics are on and the speaker is talking. So Dragos, please share your screen.
Thank you, Dr. Sylvia. And thank you, Peter, for this detailed introduction on FHIR and OpenIMIS. So I will take over right now to get into more details about OpenIMIS FHIR module. First, allow me to present myself. So I'm Dr. Dragos Dobre. I'm an IT system architect and a project leader at Swiss Tropical and Public Health Institute. So I'm working on OpenIMIS for more than 7 years now, both on developing the platform, but also in supporting implementations who actually use OpenIMIS for managing their health insurance schemes. So let's start first with the question, why an interoperability layer for OpenIMIS, why we did integrate it, that interoperability FHIR. because everybody talks about FHIR. So why not OpenIMIS? So let's start first with a simple example of integration. So when a patient basically is insured within a health insurance organization, he might get care from health facilities, and that health facilities need to know who will pay for those services and medication that the patient will receive. So basically, the interaction within health facility and insurance can be done manually through paper-based document, phone calls, but can also be done electronically to different interoperability interfaces. So here in our case, we are interested, of course, in what we call the FHIR standard interoperability, where it allows basically for two or more systems to integrate and talk to each other with the same semantics, but also the same syntax there. Yeah. So why interoperability layer? So there are two aspects. So first aspect is to improve productivity and quality of operations. So minimize data entry error risk. So if an enrollment officer will introduce data into the EMR system, but also into an insurance management system, then there is a risk of actually have different data entered in both systems. So that errors introduced by the human operators. So we want to minimize this kind of risk. Reduce operational costs. So because you only introduce in one system and not multiple systems, the time actually is limited to only one data entry. Is claim submission and validation of payment. So basically the sending of claims are done automatically and from the EMRs and other system to the insurance organization management system. So the sending of data is done automatically, so the validation of payment can also be done automatically, at least a part of it, but also that will reduce the claim review process and time and payment delays. Basically, once the claims are received, they're automatically reviewed by the system. In our case, OpenIMIS has a rule-based engine, but then having available claims in the system, medical officer can already review those claims on time, so that's doing the delays, and will create automatic payment request. Now, on the social protection and data and processes optimization, so there is what we call the one source of truth. So this is why we also separate, and we have the architecture blueprint for health in a country. So basically that allows to have dedicated registry with up-to-date data like facility registry, product registry, even the client registries. So we have one registry which are responsible for the data updates, and all the other registries or systems, they will actually use those data within their processes they have. Basically, you have also other business processes which are managed externally. So currently, you should not reinvent the wheel if there is one system which is developed for 20 years. So if there is one system which is developed for 20 years doing accounting, it's not ideal to redevelop the same system within OpenIMIS or in your system doing the same thing. So you have this specialized system you could integrate within your system through FHIR or any other API. In our case, we're looking on FHIR, of course. Okay, so basically we looked quickly with Peter what is FHIR, but just also to mention a bit of what FHIR version we are using in OpenIMIS. So basically there was the first version of FHIR released in 2014. By now, so we are looking, so HL7 is looking or developing the FHIR version 6, or they are calling R6. So it's in a pilot version, meaning it's in a release phase just for testing. So it's not our last release to be used as such. That's why also libraries out there that don't support yet the FHIR R6. Last version, which actually is released by HL7, it's FHIR version 5. So that was in 2023. Just to mention, so OpenIMIS currently is working with FHIR version 4. So that was released in 2019 and is not yet valid for version 4B, L4B, which was released a bit later, which has small changes, but not many impacts on actual FHIR L4 specification we are using right now. Peter also mentioned about what's inside the FHIR resource and profile. So profile resource defines structure, constraint, and relationship of data. What is important for us to know is this profile aspect of a FHIR resource, which is a personalized resource, meaning you take one resource. In this image, you can say the claim, and then the claim in your implementation in your system. It's a specific type of claim where you actually specialize it by limiting the cardinality. So to say that some of the attributes are mandatory or not, and also can add additional information that is required by your system through extensions. Another important aspect we need to look into is there are code system and value sets. So code system is important for the configuration of the platform. In our case, we have different option lists when you enroll an injury or when you create a claim from which you need to select there. For example, diagnosis. The diagnosis will be a code list, which in most of our OpenIMIS implementation is based on ICD coding there. There are others which are listed there, but code system is important when you want to actually put a mandatory list of codes of values that can only be used in your system. And the value set basically just regroup that or limit that to a specific elements from a code system. For example, okay, you have a generic ICD list, but a facility will only cover maternity services because it's a maternity health facility only. Just an example here on the OpenIMIS resource. So it's a patient resource which is mapped to an injury. So you can see here the type, the identifiers. You can see how it's managed as human readable information. Some extensions, so which is not actually in the default or generic FHIR specification. So in our case, if we know if the patient is head or the injury is the head of the family, and what the patient group reference is, so which group or which family actually the injury belong to. And you can also see the standard data as other identifiers, the names, the gender, the birthday. So this is how actually element of JSON for a FHIR for OpenIMIS is looking like. Now let's talk quickly about the FHIR implementation guide. So Peter also mentioned about FHIR IGs. So the FHIR IGs represent actually the profile documentation. It's very important to have this documentation in when you have a system and you develop the FHIR module for that system or a FHIR integration API. And this actually documentation is used by external systems or the provider of the external systems in order to develop the integration within your system or within OpenIMIS. So what its profile documentation listing is the personalized resources. So as I mentioned, the patient with additional information, the resource structure, how actually this looks like, the list of possible interaction. So you can read, search, create, update per different resources, and other information on how you manage the security, like authentication and authorization, and what will be the integrated workflows that your specification actually covers. If you look more broadly on the architecture standards, taking in consideration OpenHIE, so Open Health Information Exchange, so OpenIMIS is the only candidate into the Finance and Insurance Service Working Group there, so it's in the community of practice. What is specifically done in this community of practice, basically to specify data interoperability standards for health. So in our case, it's defining the workflows on how to exchange claims, what are the FHIR resources that could or should be used when you'd actually exchange claims. In some requirements, specific requirements for the finance insurance service tools that can be actually listed into this community or working group. Quick example, so the claim submission workflow. So you can see here it's two types of definition. One, it's an activity diagram where the point of service connects to the insurance information system, the financial information system, and basically it's showing in words. So what it usually does, submit medical procedure item query. So it doesn't mention the what resources to be used. So very high level to easily understand actually the process. And then within a table, you can actually see also the different data types that should be used within this process, like for example, activity definition, medication, claim, and all the others. So now if you go into details in the OpenIMIS FHIR module, so of course the objective is to allow OpenIMIS to integrate with external systems in a standardized way. And basically, if those other systems are using the same interoperability standards, using OpenIMIS using the same standards, it'd be easy to integrate. It's not always a case or straightforward, but we expect that to be available and easy to actually do. The history, so we start working on the OpenIMIS FHIR module from 2019. So we developed together, we still develop the FHIR 2.3, so FHIR version 3 module to integrate within OpenIMIS. That was other project to develop BAHB integration and DHIS2 integration by other organization. In 2020, we started to work on the FHIR R4 integration and also the integration with DHIS2 version 2, basically. So we changed from initially FHIR integration with DHIS2, which was very difficult to manage and very long to proceed into the synchronization of atomic data, into a more aggregated integration using ATX there. And we also started to work on the Claim AI module for OpenIMIS, which integrates through the FHIR standard. We had a more detailed project in 2021, Shared Readiness, which was funded through Digital Square, where we actually improved the FHIR R4 module. And later on, we have additional projects that actually used the new FHIR R4 module out there in 2022. Interesting to mention, in 2023, there were different implementations which actually started to use FHIR integration in OpenIMIS. So first in Nepal, the Nepal Health Insurance Board set a policy to request that all the claims must be submitted only through FHIR integration. They wouldn't allow the integration or sending paper based on any other kind of synchronization. And in Cameroon, they had a project to integrate with the DAMA system that is managing HIV patients. And also there was integration between CIC, so like a client registry in Cameroon with OpenIMIS. On the way of doing the integration, basically, or the developing, not the integration, the developing of OpenIMIS FHIR module. So initially, when we started to work with the FHIR version 3, the FHIR STU3, the mapping process was done manually. So that we did through the OpenIMIS wiki. It was like a table, as you can see in the image, without having a standardized validation tool. So the validation was done manually. And of course, when you do validation manually, it's very easy and prone to errors. So after we developed the module and we look more closely into the mapping and the different resources that were generated, we identified that there were some aspects of the standard that were not complying. So that's why it was also a reason to move to FHIR version 4 and to try to use a more standardized and formal process. That's why when we did the mapping process with FHIR 4, basically we used FHIR shorthand. I don't know if you heard about it. So it's a tool that allow you to build implementation guides. So you will have fish file in which you will do the profile of your resources, and running the Sushi application, Sushi tool, it will actually validate that your mapping it's correct, it's compliant, and if it's all compliant, and only if it's compliant, you will get the result as the implementation guide. So we have quality assurance validations within the process to do that. When you do that, and you have the results, final result, basically, which is that documentation of your FHIR module that you will comply with. So results on FHIR 4. So we have 24 profiles which are available within OpenIMIS right now. So you can see here the table of those profiles and with colors and the status. Basically, it's compared to the FHIR SwissTPH. So some, or let's say many were updated, some were added as new, and some were also deleted. For example, just to give an example of condition, which was mapped to a diagnosis previously there. So in that case of FHIR condition resource, so there is one attribute which was mandatory in that condition, which we didn't use it. And that basically is not compliant with original standards. And that's why we decided to remove that and to put diagnosis as a code system instead of using a resource there. The example for the code system, just to exemplify there for you to better understand. So we have different code systems here. Diagnosis I just mentioned, but we have options for patient education, patient protection, patient identification type. So here you can see in the resource example, you have the values that actually were used when the patient John Doe was actually registered. So the education level is university, the profession is like an employee, and nation is and the identification types are national ID there. So this is how basically it's actually used to those code system within the resource. And the result, as I mentioned, implementation guide there. So represent the OpenIMIS FHIR docs, FHIR documentation, listing the available resources, resource structure examples, security management, how you should actually interact with OpenIMIS through the GWT tokens, integration workflow on the 3 levels, so injury, enrollment, inquiring, and claim submissions. If you follow the link, FHIR.openimis.org, so we'll go directly to the FHIR implementation guide, and you'll see all the documentation for OpenIMIS. So we did the documentation before actually implementing it into OpenIMIS. I will go quickly now through the authentication authorizations of different workflows. I won't stay here. Maybe the presentation will be shared. So as I mentioned before, FHIR authentication authorization done through GWT bearer. We have the different workflows. So enrollment in 2 steps, inquiring in 2 steps, and then the claiming in 3 steps. Within the claimings, you can also see you can actually have integration of the inquire workflow just to get the patient coverage. So everything is linked together. Then you need to have a specific order. You need to have the enrollment of the injury of the patient before actually you can actually inquire for him, and need to inquire maybe before you actually claim. So it's also an order of priorities. One important aspect is the implementation of the FHIR 4 module. So there are three inheritance module levels that you should consider here. So the level 1 is a generic standardized HL7 FHIR 4 specification, is a more generic and high level specification. Then I just presented quickly the level 2, OpenIMIS FHIR 4 profile, which is OpenIMIS specific, but is based on the OpenIMIS generic version. So the version basically you'll find in the demo instance of OpenIMIS, and that is not usually used in a productive environment of implementation. So that's why you need in your implementation, if you're using OpenIMIS, for example, you need to have the level 3 specification, implementation specific OpenIMIS FHIR 4 profile, which is based on specific configuration and custom attributes. So to give an example, if in your implementation you have another field in the insuree data model, like it's employer number, which is not in the generic OpenIMIS, you should add it to your FHIR specification. Other examples, the code systems. In your system, you have the code system, for example, the diagnosis, which change from one implementation to another. Then you need to define your code system for those specific diagnosis lists. So that's it's very specific, and you should have that documentation which inherits from the level 2. Adding additional attributes, removing additional attributes, because in OpenIMIS you might have those, but you don't use those attributes. So you could remove them from the specification. So in the end, you'll generate your implementation guide specifically. That will be the documentation for all the providers of the EMR's tools in the country, for example, or any other tools you want to integrate with OpenIMIS to FHIR. Resources. So you can find on internet, so on GitHub, you can find the implementation guide, the last build, but also the source code. So if you have other systems, you want to develop an implementation guide for it, then you can start looking on that from OpenIMIS there as an example. Otherwise, you could start looking on that to have your specific country implementation guide. As I mentioned, the level 3, you have the source codes of the FHIR module, and you can find the information about the Sushi and IG publisher, so the tools used to actually build the implementation guide, and the Python FHIR library you are actually used to build OpenIMIS FHIR module. We'll go also through some interoperability examples. So first examples, which basically was mentioned also in Peter's presentation, AI-based claims adjudication. So we actually developed this into OpenIMIS. And the integration of the Claim AI module, the name of that module, is done through FHIR. So you can see here, this is the process of the claim reviewing with AI. So as I mentioned, there is a rule engine after submission, which checks directly specific condition we know. We did an AI engine, AI module, actually to categorize claims as accepted or rejected, and the medical officer will look on those flagged claims as rejected to check if the rejection is correct or not. So now, if you look on this AI engine, so basically we took the FHIR for claim data model as a data input, which we transform into an AI input model that's specifically for the AI model execution. And the output is also sent through a claim response if it's flagged as rejected or accepted. We also need specifically elements. So within the claim, you have reference to a patient, to an insuree, but we need to know the gender and the age of that insuree, of that patient. So we also use the FHIR contain resources, which allows in one bundle to specify the resource and all the elements which are referenced by that resource also there. The diagram, the architecture diagram for that integration basically is, as you can see on the screen. So you have the OpenIMIS implementation on the right there, which had a specific module just to integrate, to make the transformation integrate with the OpenIMIS AI claim AI implementation. So this is the module, claim AI module, which executes the AI model. And you can see in between the FHIR claim response integration process. And we have a third computer system, which just allows to actually train the AI module based on claim data. Another example is from Cameroon. So as I mentioned already, there is in Cameroon, the Cameroon Health Cover CIC platform, a client registry, which the main role is to register all citizens and assign a unique identifier, generation of cards. So that integration is done through FHIR. The OpenIMIS platform has a role of claim management. So enrollment of citizens, beneficiary management, and claim management. There is a DAMA patient management system for HIV patient management, which allows for registration and service delivery for HIV patients. So this was integrated to FHIR, but it's not integrated right now with OpenIMIS in the country. And there are other platforms which are foreseen to be integrated sooner or later. Integration was done through HRC FHIR Air4 standard. Another example is the payment system integration. So we foreseen resources also to be used for the payment integration. So you can see here an example also of architecture for integration of payment switch, notification switch, SMS, WhatsApp, payment switch. You can think about Moja Loop, GPG in Tanzania. You can request switch like USSDs, and through FHIR, you can integrate mobile application and accounting system or any other system out there. So we added specific profiles for invoice and bills, but also payment notification, also to receive notification when payments are done, and the subscription mechanism, which is a specific mechanism in FHIR that allow to receive notification when specific resources have changed within the system. And before concluding, just to show a bit of OpenIMIS interoperability options. So this slide was developed by Uwe Vazer, so I thank him for this. So there is a possibility to integrate with FHIR. So there is a different platform that you can actually look into for integration, but there are others which are done through different other initiatives like digital convention initiatives on the social protection, GovStack, or some more broader on the government level, not only in health, Open G2P also. So there are different platforms we are looking and different standards we are looking actually to integrate with OpenIMIS in order to make it more accessible by systems and by domain out there, so everyone can use it as easily as possible. And with that, I want to thank you for that, and I give the word back to Silvia.
Thank you, Dragos. We have a few minutes, so we'd like to jump into a Q&A session. So there's 3 questions I've seen on the chat. So the first one was from Samson, and his question was, and I think either one of you could take the question. How does the system handle cases where patients' eligibility status changes mid-treatment, and which specific data exchange standard and protocols OpenIMIS currently support? That was from Samson.
Trying to find the question. How does the system handle cases? Okay, so basically in OpenIMIS, in most of the cases, I can take that question, Peter. The policy duration in most of the cases in the implementation are valid for 1 year. So during that period of time, the eligibility status is not checked, and it doesn't change. There is possibility to add additional members to the family or to remove members from the families in case of newborn, and the deceased member, for example. That's in most of the cases. There are other cases that actually the payment is done monthly, and in that case, they can handle this eligibility and change the package, the insurance package that they are to be subscribed to. That's an example we have in Comoros, where there are 8 levels of contributions, and of course, from 1 month to another, one insuree can change from one level to another, so the contribution level could update. So on the data exchange standard and protocols currently support, so we just presented the FHIR standard, and it also supports the ADX. So ADX is a standard that allows you to exchange aggregated data, and we use that to integrate with the DHIS2 and Superset. So any BI issue.
Your mic. Please help us mute people.
Okay, thank you. So we can use that to integrate with any BI platform you actually use. Back to you, Celine.
There's one more question from Alan. Is the OpenIMIS FHIR connector built in, or is it a standalone module?
Thank you for the question. So the OpenIMIS FHIR connector is built in. Peter mentioned in his presentation, like it is following a facade design pattern. Basically, OpenIMIS being modular, we developed a module that transforms the FHIR data structure to OpenIMIS data model, and that's internally to OpenIMIS, the OpenIMIS data model is used. So that's why it's following the facade data, the design pattern.
Next question is from Anisette. Could you show us how we can move from OpenMRS to OpenIMIS without losing the data?
Anisette, maybe if you can explain more the question, what do you mean by losing the data?
Anisette, you can unmute yourself. Maybe while we wait for... Yes, Anisette?
Yeah,
Yes.
we normally use the OpenMRS. I mean, from moving from OpenMRS to OpenIMIS without using the data we are using.
We don't hear very well. I think it's also cut now.
Maybe he can type it out.
Yeah.
Maybe you can type it in the
type,
chat.
thank you.
Okay, we can move on to the next question from Clive. Are you planning to move to FHIR R5? Are there any significant changes in the resources used between R4 and R5 in the claims environment?
Yes, so that's a very good question. Thank you for that. Basically, we discuss within the OpenIMIS community if we do this change. The decision was not to do it because there are not changes or not impacts which will bring any added value. So what we are waiting right now is for the version 6 to get out, so to be released, and we'll develop the FHIR module for the version R6. Just a general comment also, we saw many other platforms, global goods, DPIs out there, which also decided now to move to R5. And most of them are based on on FHIR L4.
Anyone who's not speaking, please mute yourselves. And then I think the next question is from Herbert, who is asking on the claims AI module, what exactly does it do? Is it used on reporting or something?
Yes, so the claim AI module in OpenIMIS is supporting the medical officer from the insurance organization in reviewing claims. What it does exactly is to get all the claims that are submitting within the system and flag them, review them, and giving a result as accepted or rejected. So it's based on historic data, so previously manual review claims which are used to train the AI model. And based on the AI model, when it will be executed, will be either accept or reject claims. And those rejected claims will be flagged to medical officers in order to review them. So the idea is not to give the responsibility to an AI module, AI solution to take decisions, but to a human operator, and also to provide a feedback of why, the justification of why a claim is rejected or not. In other cases, also the result from the AI model is not correct. So the human operator medical officers role is also to fix the misclassification or those results which are not correct, and basically also to provide the feedback when will be the case to retrain the model based on all this fixed classification there.
The next question is from Steve. Do you use FHIR bundles in your implementations? I did not see a mention of it. Please shed more light.
Yes, so we are actually using the FHIR bundle. So when we get more results, or a list of results, we put them in the bundle. And I also mentioned about the contained resources. When you have a contained resources, linking different resources they are also mentioned in the same bundle there. Yes, we are using the bundle mechanism.
Next is from Bright. Does the OpenIMIS FHIR connector module require a separate to set up a separate FHIR server different from OpenIMIS? Not sure. I don't know if you understand it.
I understand. Thank you,
Okay.
Silvia. No, you don't need to have a separate FHIR server because being built in OpenIMIS as a facade design pattern, it's all built together and running together. So the response is no, you don't need another FHIR server for that.
And then I think the last question is from Musha. Could you please explain how to configure the FHIR interface in OpenIMIS to connect with blockchain systems for cross-border payment processing?
That's a difficult one.
I think we can take that to the wider community meetings, the developer calls we have on Thursdays. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dragos, and thank you, Peter.
There was, if I can intervene, there's from Aniset. I don't know if he got more details. Because I see some answers from members here. But, otherwise, we can stop here.
Anisat, do you have any additions? I see Bright was commenting. Okay. Okay, thank you, everyone. Yes, Alan.
I have a question. Dr. Dragos mentioned that the strategy with OpenIMIS is the facade strategy. And from my understanding, I could be wrong, but with facade means you just build like a connector on top of OpenIMIS. And yet he mentioned that the connector is inbuilt in OpenIMIS? Like, could you explain a little bit more about that? Yeah.
Yes, sure. So now the facade interact strategy, facade design panel, is exactly what you said. Now there are two options. Either you developed it outside OpenIMIS, and that will be a mediator, for example, in OpenHIM. And this is part of the work was Peter actually did, and he presented. So in that case, the facade, and you have an intermediated system, an interoperability layer that allow you to execute that mediator, that facade externally. And you need to integrate all the system through that interoperability layer. So that's one of the options. And the second option, you can do a facade within your system. So you have your basic API in OpenIMIS. We have our API is based on GraphQL, and you can add additional APIs. It being also a modular system, you can activate this module or integrate this module, FHIR module, within your implementation. And what it does is to transform from the FHIR structure, to OpenIMIS data model internally, and make calls to different other modules in OpenIMIS, injury, claims, and others in services, in order to actually interact with the data in the database, making the necessary validations and transformation that OpenIMIS does anyway when it's getting that information through the normal API. So there are two types of facade. I understand what you mean by facade externally, which is done to a mediator, for example. But in our case, we also call a facade, even if we actually integrate it inside OpenIMIS. If I'm not wrong, I think OpenMRS also they did the same way, a facade through within OpenMRS system, like a module. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So does it mean like if in a country you have a different implementation of OpenIMIS, you can actually add on, let's say like the profiles and the resources, you can add on to them openly?
Yes, exactly. You should be able to add on. First, you customize the OpenIMIS solution itself based on the country implementation requirements. Again, if you don't use specific fields, if you add additional information, data you need to record, or if you have different other constraints, you need to customize the solution and in itself. And then if you want to integrate with through FHIR, you need to, in addition to add those validations with modification, customization in the FHIR module. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that answers my question.
Welcome. Back to you, Dr. Sylvia.
Okay. Thank you, Dragos, and thank you for everyone who has stayed. I know we've gone a little bit over time, but thank you for sticking around and for being very involved in the discussion. So if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to write to me. I've also shared the OpenIMIS wiki if you'd like to dive into OpenIMIS and learn more about it. Thank you very much for joining the webinar. We are hoping to have this FHIR series of webinars at least once every month. So we invite you to look out on our social media platforms and we will be sharing more information. Thank you again to Dragos and Peter for being kind enough to be willing to do this for us. It was great to have you join as our first speakers for this series. So thank you very much for joining and for leading the sessions. And to everyone who joined, thank you. And I think that's it. Have a great rest of your days and have a great weekend ahead.
Thank you too.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks, everybody. Excellent presentation. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.